This isn't just a collapse, it's the collapse. Imagine setting an NHL record for the most wins in a single season. You dominate October to April. You're the favorites. You've got the talent, you've got the experience, and the leadership. The Stanley Cup is yours to lose. But then you lose. Not in the conference finals, not even in the second round, but you get bounced by a team that barely made the playoffs. This is the story of the 2022-23 Boston Bruins, a team that was rewriting history only to become a cautionary tale.
And the Panthers have eliminated the Boston Bruins!
How did a roster this stacked unravel in real time? What happened behind the scenes? And most importantly, are the Bruins still living in the shadow of that failure? The Boston Bruins had a season for the ages. They shattered the NHL record books with 65 wins and 135 points. The President's Trophy? Secured. Home ice advantage? Locked in. Experts and fans were ready to crown them Cup champions before the playoffs even started. But hockey doesn't care about expectations. Just 2 weeks into the postseason, the Bruins were gone. Eliminated in 7 games by the 8th-seeded Florida Panthers, a team which they led 3-1 at one point in the series. You're about to see sometimes the weight of greatness is heavier than the Stanley Cup itself. The 2022-23 Boston Bruins entered the season with a chip on their shoulder. Patrice Bergeron returned on a 1-year deal. David Krejci came back for a year from Czechia. And there were doubts about this aging core and if they could still compete. But then, they exploded out of the gates. The Bruins won 20 of their first 23 games and captured the longest winning home streak to start the season with 14 straight victories at TD Garden. By mid-season, they were unstoppable. Linus Ullmark led the lead in goals against average and save percentage. David Pastrnak scored 61 goals, second only to Connor McDavid. The team had its depth, chemistry, coaching, defense, goaltending. Jim Montgomery was in his first year as the head coach, and he looked like a genius. They clinched the division title early. They broke the wins record, and they cruised into the playoffs. Meanwhile, their first-round opponent, the Florida Panthers, squeaked in as a second wild card on the last day of the regular season. No one even gave them a chance. I remember predicting a sweep for the Bruins. They were going to take out the Panthers. And on paper, this series looked like a sweep too. But hockey is played on the ice, not on paper. And the Bruins were about to find out quickly that things can spiral, momentum can change. And no matter how historic your season was, the playoffs are a different animal. Game 1, things went according to plan. The Bruins won 3-1. They looked calm, confident, in control, and even without their captain, Patrice Bergeron, who was injured, they still took it. Game number 2 for the Bruins may have been the moment where they realized, oh, this Florida team might actually be able to play. After a 2-2 tie ending the second period, Florida went on to score 4 straight goals before Boston's Taylor Hall was finally able to net 1 to make this a 6-3 victory for the Panthers. Boston didn't panic though. Heading into game number 3, Florida has since become known as a pretty poor home team in the playoffs, but they did not play well in this game. Boston scored the first 4 goals of the game between the first and third period, while Florida finally was able to answer with a shorty from Forsling and then a goal from Reinhart, but a 4-2 victory for the Bruins put them back in control of this series. Game 4 went fairly similarly for the Bruins. They never actually trailed in Game 4, having a lead through the entire game and eventually winning it 6-2. This is exactly where everybody expected the Boston Bruins to be. Sure, there was a hiccup in game number 2, but Boston recovered strong with the 2 victories on away ice. Heading back home, this was their chance. They were 1 win away, and they'd move on. Then, Game 5 happened. This was the first crack at it. And a sloppy 4-3 overtime loss in front of a stunned TD Garden crowd, turnovers, breakdowns, panic, everything went wrong. Jeremy Swayman, their other goaltender, stayed on the bench. Jim Montgomery stuck with Ullmark, who looked shaky at best. People started to question whether fatigue was setting in. Game 6, it was another thriller, but another loss, and the Panthers managed to tie the series 3-3. Suddenly, all the pressure in the world shifted back to Boston. Then came Game 7, April 30th, 2023. TD Garden was electric, but it quickly fell silent. Florida was hot out of the gates, going up 2-0 on goals from Montour and Reinhart. But Boston was able to rally back with 3 unanswered goals from Crease, Bertuzzi, and Pasternak to take the lead. Victory was within reach. But then, with under a minute to go, Panthers defenseman Brandon Montour tied it. And in overtime, a broken play and a battle behind the net led to Carter Verhaeghe getting the puck out in front. Verhaeghe snapped a wrister over Swayman's shoulder on the short side. Final score, 4-3 Panthers. The team with the best regular season in NHL history was out in round 1. Just like that. And the President's Trophy curse lived on. After the game, Montgomery admitted that he didn't push the right buttons. Players looked emotionally crushed, and what followed was a mass exodus. The 2 veterans, Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci, both retired after this season. Taylor Hall was traded. Tyler Bertuzzi walked to Toronto in free agency. The cap-strapped Bruins lost multiple pieces, and the dream season had turned into a nightmare. The collapse wasn't just about one game. It was about momentum, coaching decisions, fatigue, pressure, and the weight of expectations. The kind of weight that breaks even the best teams. So, what did it all mean? For the Bruins, it was a hard lesson in how regular season dominance doesn't guarantee playoff success. They chased records and got them, but at what cost? Linus Ullmark was exhausted. The lineup was inconsistent. Bergeron was injured in a meaningless Game 82 and was never fully himself. The Panthers, on the other hand, were loose, aggressive, and playing with nothing to lose. And that freedom, combined with the goaltending heroics from Sergei Bobrovsky, was enough to take down the Goliath Bruins. Suddenly, a team that looked like a dynasty waiting to happen was now rebuilding on the fly. For fans, it was a gut punch. A dream year turned into one of the most painful what-ifs in franchise history. And it was a reminder for the NHL that the President's Trophy is as much of a curse as it is a crown. So let's look at the bigger picture. When a team fails this badly, when the expectations are the highest they've ever been, it begs the question, what if? What if Patrice Bergeron skipped Game 82 to start the playoffs healthy? What if Jim Montgomery had gone to Jeremy Swayman earlier? What if the Boston Bruins hadn't chased the regular season win record and instead rested their star players? Would Boston have lifted the cup this year? We'll never know. There was a pretty strong Vegas Golden Knights team in the West, but I think Boston had them beat in every area. What we do know is that the legacy of the 2022-23 team in Boston will forever be complicated. They were one of the greatest regular season squads in NHL history, but also one of the biggest playoff failures ever. This loss didn't just mark the end of the Bergeron era in Boston. It marked the beginning of an identity crisis. Sure, Boston still made the playoffs the following season with 110 points and eliminated the Maple Leafs in typical Game 7 fashion, but they ran into the same Florida team in the second round. A late goal in Game 6 brought on a deja vu moment for all Bruins fans and players alike. And at this point, the complexion of the Bruins organization had shifted. Boston traded Linus Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators after paying Jeremy Swayman an 8-year, $66 million contract after far too much drama, but it was now his crease. No more best tandem in the league, no more safety nets. The 2024-25 season started off so flat that it snowballed into a disastrous season that saw the Bruins lose another 2 key pieces. First is coach Jim Montgomery, who was fired just 20 games into the season after an 8-9-3 start. This removed the leadership behind the bench from the team that dominated the league 2 years earlier. The Bruins proceeded to remain at the bottom of the Atlantic Division for the whole season, leading to Captain Brad Marchand being traded after contract talks broke down. The Bruins traded him to their bitter rivals in South Beach. And Marchand wasn't just the captain, he was the heart of the locker room. With 16 seasons and a Stanley Cup under his belt, Marchand had stuck around while all others left Boston. He was what it meant to be a Boston Bruin, and now he was gone. With these 2 key losses, the foundation of the Bruins' historic season was now out the door. Management had tried to prolong competitiveness for one season too long, and instead of being able to retool on the fly, the Bruins have had to go into a small-scale rebuild. But the question now shifts to, how long will it take for Boston to become competitive again? The new core of the Bruins with Pasternak, McAvoy, and Swayman has some potential, but when you look beyond that, this Bruins squad is far depleted from the team that won the President's Trophy. Sure, there's some excitement with Boston drafting James Haggins, but to acquire a talent of that quality, you have to be at the bottom of the NHL. And with players of the caliber of David Pasternak, Charlie McAvoy, and Jeremy Swayman, how long does it take before losing culture sours relationships between those players and management? Only time will tell. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more NHL stories, analysis, and breakdowns just like this one. Until next time, keep your head up out there.